Robert Williams sat in his truck outside the Anderson Logistics warehouse, engine off, keys still in the ignition. The dashboard clock read 7:43 p.m. Not the latest he'd ever been, but later than he'd promised Emily this morning. Route 9 had backed up for 40 minutes because of a jackknife semi near the exit ramp. He watched the brake lights stretch ahead like a glowing red scar across the Pennsylvania twilight, each minute ticking away another small promise broken. And through the living room window of the rental house, he could see the flicker of the television. At least she was home. That was the first check every night. The second was always the same, whether she'd eaten. The third was guilt, heavy and familiar, settling into his chest like an old tenant who never paid rent but never left either. He climbed out of the truck. His work boots hit the pavement with the dull thud of exhaustion. The red Anderson Logistics polo clung to his back, damp from 10 hours of moving inventory reports and reconciling shipment discrepancies in a warehouse that hadn't updated its software since 2008. The September air was warm, but the breeze carried that first hint of autumn, the kind that smelled like dying leaves and shorter days. The front door wasn't locked. It should have been. He'd told Emily 100 times, lock it when you get home, even if it's still daylight. She was 7. 7-year-olds forget things. Inside, the house smelled like something he hadn't cooked. Chicken soup, not the canned kind, the real kind, with carrots and celery cut into actual pieces. Emily was on the couch, legs tucked beneath her, a library book open in her lap. She looked up when the door clicked shut, and the relief that crossed her face was the kind that shouldn't belong to a child. Shoulders dropping, breath releasing, the small tell that she'd been waiting, worrying, wondering if tonight would be the night he didn't come home at all. Hey, Daddy. Hey, baby girl. He dropped his keys on the side table and crossed the room. The soup bowls were still on the coffee table, 2 of them. One small, one regular-sized, both empty. Where'd you get the soup? Emily closed the book, her finger marking the page. Mrs. Flores next door. You were late, so I knocked on her door. She said she made extra. Robert stood there, the weight of the day pressing down on his spine. Mrs. Flores was 68 years old and lived on a fixed income. She'd made extra because she knew. Because this wasn't the first time Emily had shown up on her porch at 6 o'clock hungry and alone. Did you thank her? I drew her a picture. Good. He sat down beside Emily and pulled her into his side. She leaned in without hesitation, the way she used to when Linda was still alive. When the world made sense and dinner happened at 6 and someone was always home to ask about homework. That was 3 years ago. 3 years since the funeral, since the last round of chemo failed, since the hospital called at 2 a.m. to say Linda was gone. Emily had been 4, old enough to remember her mother's face, young enough to forget the sound of her voice. Robert kissed the top of Emily's head. Her hair smelled like the strawberry shampoo Linda used to buy in bulk from the grocery store, the kind that came in the big pink bottles. He still bought the same brand. Some things you didn't change. What'd you do today? We had art class. I drew you at work. Yeah? Can I see it? Emily pulled a folded piece of construction paper from between the couch cushions and handed it over. Robert unfolded it carefully. The drawing showed a man standing in a large room filled with boxes. The man's face was brown crayon, his shirt red, his boots black. He stood alone. No other people. Just boxes and a dark window in the background. That's me. You look tired, Daddy. Robert studied the picture. The man in the drawing did look tired. Shoulders slumped, head down. The details a 7-year-old noticed because she'd seen them every night for 3 years. I am tired, baby girl, but I'm okay. Emily didn't say anything. She just watched him with those big brown eyes that were too much like Linda's, too much like someone who'd learned early that people you love don't always come home. You hungry? I ate at Mrs. Flores. Homework? Finished it. Good. Go brush your teeth. I'll be up in a minute. Emily slid off the couch and padded toward the stairs in her socks. Robert stayed where he was, holding the drawing. The man in the picture stood in a warehouse, surrounded by boxes, completely alone. He wondered if Emily knew how accurate that was. Probably. Kids saw things adults worked hard to hide. He folded the drawing and set it on the table. His phone buzzed. Text from his mother. Call me when you get a chance. Want to hear M's voice. He typed back. Tomorrow. She's heading to bed. Another buzz. This one from Darnell, his buddy from high school who now works security at the hospital. You still owe me for covering that shift last month. Drinks Friday? Robert didn't answer. He couldn't remember the last time he'd had a Friday night free. Upstairs he found Emily in the bathroom, toothbrush in her mouth, staring at her reflection. She was small for 7, skinny in the way that worried the pediatrician every checkup. Is she eating enough? The doctor always asked. Robert always said yes. Technically true. Quantity wasn't the problem. Consistency was. Emily spit into the sink and rinsed. Daddy? Yeah? Are you going to work tomorrow? I have to, baby girl. Even though it's Saturday? Robert crouched down so they were eye level. Just for a few hours in the morning, Mrs. Flores said she'd come over and make you pancakes. Emily nodded, but her face did that thing it did when she was trying not to cry. Lips pressed together, eyes wide, jaw tight. Hey, look at me! She did. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. You know what it means? Emily shook her head. It means you keep going anyway. Even when it's hard. Even when you're tired. You keep going because the people you love are counting on you. Like you? Like me. Emily wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Okay. Robert kissed her forehead and stood. Get in bed. I'll read to you. Emily's room was small, just big enough for a twin bed, a dresser, and a bookshelf Linda had painted white before Emily was born. The walls were still the pale yellow Linda had chosen, the curtains still the ones with the little ducks that Emily had loved as a toddler. Robert hadn't changed anything. Couldn't. This room was the last place Linda had touched with intent, the last thing she'd built with her own hands. Emily climbed into bed and pulled the blanket up to her chin. Robert sat on the edge of the mattress and picked up the book from the nightstand, Charlotte's Web. They were halfway through. Emily loved Wilbur. She cried every time Charlotte got older. He read 3 chapters. By the end of the second, Emily's eyes were closed. By the middle of the third, her breathing had gone deep and steady. Robert kept reading anyway. Not for her. For himself. Because these 15 minutes, when the world was quiet and Emily was safe, and the only thing that mattered was whether Wilbur would survive, these were the only minutes of the day that didn't hurt. He closed the book and set it back on the nightstand. Emily didn't stir. He stood, turned off the lamp, and paused in the doorway. The nightlight glowed soft pink in the corner. Emily's hand was tucked under her cheek, her mouth slightly open. She looked so small, so fragile, so much like Linda it made his chest ache. Robert pulled the door halfway closed and walked downstairs. The house was quiet now, just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of a car passing on the street outside. He sat at the kitchen table and opened his laptop. Bills first. Rent, $1,200, due in 5 days. Electric, $140. Water, $65. Phone, $80. Groceries, he'd spent $230 last week, and they were already running low on milk and bread. Emily's school supplies, another $40 he hadn't budgeted for. The dental appointment he'd rescheduled twice. $150 copay. Total, $1,905. Paycheck from Anderson, $2,100 after taxes. Leftover, $195. Add the second paycheck at the end of the month, and he had $390 cushion, except there was no cushion. There was the $40,000 still owed to the hospital from Linda's final 6 months. The payment plan was $600 a month. He'd missed 2 already. They'd sent letters, polite ones, but firm. Your account is past due. Please contact us to discuss payment options. Robert closed the laptop. The math didn't work. It never worked. He'd been doing this dance for 3 years, robbing Peter to pay Paul, skipping his own meals to keep Emily fed, picking up extra shifts whenever Anderson offered them. It still wasn't enough. His phone buzzed again. This time, an email. Subject line. Anderson Logistics Leadership Update. He opened it. Dear team, effective Monday, September 12th. Anderson Logistics is pleased to announce the appointment of Rebecca Anderson as Chief Executive Officer. Miss Anderson comes to us from Hastings Global Supply, where she led a successful restructuring initiative that reduced operating costs by 35% while improving delivery efficiency. We are confident her leadership will position Anderson Logistics for long-term growth and profitability. Please join us in welcoming Miss Anderson to the team. Sincerely, James Harmon, Board Chairman. Robert read the email twice. Restructuring. Operating costs reduced by 35%. Those were corporate words for layoffs. He'd seen it before. New CEO comes in, promises efficiency, cuts half the workforce, and leaves the survivors to do double the work for the same pay. He set the phone down and stared at the wall. The kitchen light buzzed faintly, the bulb flickering at the edges. He needed to replace it, added to the list. Upstairs, Emily coughed once in her sleep. Robert listened, waiting to see if it would turn into something worse. It didn't. Just a single cough, then silence. He stood and walked to the sink. The dishes from this morning were still there. A bowl, a spoon, a cup. He washed them slowly, methodically, letting the hot water burn his hands. It felt good. A different kind of pain. One he could control. When the dishes were done, he dried them and put them away. Then he turned off the light and stood in the dark kitchen, listening to the house settle around him. This was his life now. Work, bills, Emily, sleep, repeat. No room for anything else. No space for the person he used to be, the one who laughed at Darnell's jokes and went to college football games on Saturdays and believed things would work out if you just tried hard enough. That person died with Linda. Robert checked the locks on the doors, turned off the downstairs lights, and climbed the stairs. He stopped outside Emily's room and pushed the door open a crack. She hadn't moved, still curled on her side, hand under her cheek, breathing steady. He pulled the door closed and walked to his own room. The bed was unmade. He hadn't had time this morning. The laundry basket in the corner was overflowing. He'd deal with it this weekend. Maybe. Robert sat on the edge of the bed and pulled off his boots. His feet ached, his back ached, his shoulders ached, everything ached. He lay down on top of the covers, still in his work clothes, and stared at the ceiling. The alarm was set for 5:30 a.m. 6 hours of sleep if he fell asleep right now. He wouldn't. He never did. The room was dark, but not quiet. Outside, a dog barked. A car door slammed. Somewhere down the block, a couple was arguing, their voices muffled but angry. Robert closed his eyes and tried to think about nothing. It didn't work. His brain cycled through the same loop it always did. Emily's face when he came home late, the bills on the kitchen table, the hospital letters, the new CEO, the restructuring, the 35% cost reduction. He opened his eyes. The ceiling fan was off. He couldn't afford to run it at night anymore. The electric bill last month had been $160. This month it needed to be under $140 or he'd have to skip groceries. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. He ignored it. Probably Darnell again, or his mother, or another automated reminder from the hospital. He didn't have the energy to care. Robert turned onto his side and pulled the pillow over his head. Tomorrow was another double shift. 8 hours in the warehouse, then 4 more in the evening doing inventory audits. 12 hours total. $18 an hour, base pay. Time and a half after 40 hours. He did the math in his head. $378 before taxes. $290 after. Every dollar mattered. Every shift counted. He thought about Emily's drawing. The man standing alone in the warehouse, tired, surrounded by boxes. No one else in the picture, just him. She was 7 years old, and already she understood. Robert closed his eyes again and waited for sleep that wouldn't come. The alarm went off at 5:30 a.m. Robert hit snooze once, then dragged himself out of bed. The house was still dark. He showered in 4 minutes, dressed in the same red polo and jeans from yesterday, and went downstairs. Coffee first. Black. No sugar. He drank it standing at the counter, staring out the window at the street. The neighbor's porch light was on. Mrs. Flores was already awake, probably making breakfast for her husband before he left for his shift at the factory. Robert rinsed the cup and set it in the sink. Upstairs, Emily was still asleep. He wrote a note on the dry erase board by the fridge. At work, Mrs. Flores will be over at 8. Love you, Dad. He grabbed his keys and walked out into the cold morning. The truck started on the second try. It needed an oil change. He'd been putting it off for 2 months. Add it to the list. Anderson Logistics was 20 minutes away. A squat concrete building surrounded by chain-link fence and semi-trucks. Robert parked in the employee lot and walked through the side entrance. The warehouse floor was already buzzing. Forklifts moving pallets. Workers in orange vests shouting over the noise of engines and conveyor belts. The smell of diesel and cardboard. Robert clocked in at the terminal by the door. 6:02 a.m. Close enough. Williams! He turned. It was Pete Alvarez, the shift supervisor. Mid-50s, gray beard, permanent scowl, yeah? Boss wants to see you. Office. Now. Robert frowned. Which boss? The new one. Pete jerked his thumb toward the admin building on the other side of the lot. Robert's stomach tightened. The new CEO had been here less than a week, and she was already calling people into the office. That wasn't a good sign. He walked across the lot, past the loading docks and the employee break room. The admin building was smaller, quieter. Carpet instead of concrete. Fluorescent lights instead of industrial floods. Robert took the stairs to the second floor and found the CEO's office at the end of the hall. The door was open. Inside, a woman sat behind a desk reading something on her laptop. She was maybe 40, white, dark hair pulled back in a low ponytail. She wore a gray blazer over a white blouse, no jewelry except a watch. Her desk was immaculate. No personal photos, no coffee mug, just a laptop, a notepad, and a pen. Robert knocked on the doorframe. She looked up. Her eyes were sharp, assessing, the kind of eyes that missed nothing. Robert Williams? Yes, ma'am. Close the door. Sit. Robert did. The chair across from her desk was stiff, uncomfortable, probably intentional. She closed the laptop and folded her hands on the desk. I'm Rebecca Anderson. I've been reviewing personnel files since I started here. Yours came up. Okay. You've been with Anderson for 8 years. Senior logistics analyst, consistently high performance reviews, no disciplinary issues. You turned down a promotion to warehouse supervisor 2 years ago. Why? Robert shifted in the chair. The hours didn't work with my schedule. Your schedule? I have a daughter, 7 years old. I'm the only parent. Rebecca's expression didn't change. And the extra shifts you've been picking up, those work with your schedule? I make it work. Do you? Robert met her gaze. Is there a reason I'm here? Rebecca leaned back in her chair. I'm restructuring this company. That means cutting costs, improving efficiency, eliminating redundancies. I've identified 40 positions that are no longer necessary. Yours isn't one of them, yet. The word hung in the air. Yet. I need people I can rely on, Rebecca continued. People who understand logistics, who know this operation inside and out, and who can handle more responsibility. You fit that profile. I'm offering you Senior Manager of Operations. $95,000 annual salary, starts next month. Robert blinked. $95,000. That was more than double his current salary. That was bills paid on time. That was Emily's school supplies without checking the bank account first. That was the hospital debt gone in 2 years instead of 10. What's the catch? Rebecca's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Smart. The catch is this. I'm implementing a new restructuring plan. 40 positions eliminated. I need someone with credibility to publicly endorse it. The warehouse staff trusts you. Your signature on the plan carries weight. Robert's stomach dropped. You want me to sign off on firing 40 people? I want you to sign off on saving this company by putting 40 families out of work, by keeping 200 families employed. Those are the stakes, Mr. Williams. 40 jobs now, or everyone's jobs in 6 months when we go under. Robert looked at the desk, the notepad, the pen. The immaculate surface that held no trace of the lives Rebecca was about to destroy. How long do I have to decide? 48 hours. Robert stood. I'll think about it. Don't think too long. The offer expires Wednesday morning. He walked out of the office, down the stairs, across the lot. The warehouse noise hit him like a wall. Forklifts, engines, shouting. 40 people in this building were about to lose everything, and Rebecca Anderson wanted him to smile and tell them it was for the best. Robert clocked out at the terminal. His shift didn't start for another hour, but he couldn't stay here. Not right now. He sat in his truck and stared at the steering wheel. $95,000. 40 families. His phone buzzed. Text from Mrs. Flores. Emily's awake, eating pancakes. She's fine. Robert texted back, "Thanks. I'll be home by noon." He started the truck and pulled out of the lot. The sun was higher now, cutting through the clouds, turning the Pennsylvania hills gold. It was going to be a beautiful day, the kind Linda used to love. She'd make him stop the truck on mornings like this, get out and just stand there, breathing in the air, soaking in the light. She said it was important to notice beauty when it happened, because you never knew when it would be the last time. Robert drove home and tried not to think about what he was going to say to Rebecca Anderson in 48 hours. Monday morning arrived too fast. Robert dropped Emily at school and drove straight to Anderson. The warehouse was quieter than usual, people standing in clusters, whispering. Someone had leaked the restructuring plan. Everyone knew 40 jobs were on the line. No one knew which 40. Robert avoided eye contact and went straight to his desk in the back office. The analyst's bullpen was a cramped space with 6 desks, 4 computers, and a coffee maker that hadn't worked in 3 years. His desk was in the corner, piled with shipping manifests and inventory reports. He sat down and opened his email. 200 unread messages, most of them automated alerts. One from Rebecca Anderson, sent at 6:15 a.m. Subject: Restructuring Plan. Review required. He opened it. Attached was a PDF, 83 pages. Robert skimmed the first 10. The language was dense, corporate, sanitized, operational efficiency, cost optimization, strategic realignment. Nowhere did it say what it actually meant. 40 people losing their paychecks, their health insurance, their ability to feed their families. Page 12 listed the positions. Robert scanned the names. Miguel Reyes, forklift operator, 3 kids. Letitia Brown, shipping coordinator, single mom. Kevin Tran, inventory clerk, taking night classes to finish his degree. People Robert had worked with for years. People who showed up on time, did their jobs, went home to families who depended on them. He closed the PDF. His phone buzzed. Text from Rebecca Anderson. "Need your answer by tomorrow morning. Yes or no?" Robert didn't reply. At lunch, he sat in his truck and called his mother. "Robert, I've been waiting for you to call. How's me grandbaby?" "She's good, Ma. School's going fine. You sound tired." "I'm always tired." "You working too much again?" "I work what I have to." His mother sighed. It was the same sigh she'd been giving him since he was 16. The one that said, "I worry about you, but I'm not going to nag." Emily needs her father healthy, Robert. You can't pour from an empty cup. "I know." "Do you?" "Because last time I saw you, you looked like you hadn't slept in a week." Robert rubbed his eyes. "Ma, I didn't call to get a lecture." "Then why did you call?" "Good question." He didn't know. Maybe because he needed to hear a voice that didn't want anything from him. Maybe because he needed to remember what it felt like to be someone's son instead of someone's father. Just checking in. "I'll bring Emily by this weekend." "You better. She's growing up so fast I don't want to miss it." "I know, Ma. I gotta go. Love you." "Love you too, baby." Robert hung up and stared at the dashboard. The clock read 12:47 p.m. He had 13 minutes left on his lunch break. He thought about Emily's face this morning when he dropped her at school. She'd held onto his hand a little longer than usual. Didn't say anything, just held on. Like she was afraid he wouldn't be there when she got out. Robert closed his eyes and leaned his head back against the seat. $95,000 would change everything. He could pay off the hospital debt. He could buy Emily new shoes that actually fit. He could stop choosing between groceries and gas. He could breathe. But signing that plan meant 40 people wouldn't. He thought about Miguel Reyes, who'd helped Robert move into this rental house 3 years ago, who'd carried boxes up the stairs while Robert tried not to cry because Linda wasn't there to see it. He thought about Letitia Brown, who'd brought Emily a birthday cake last year because Robert had been working a double and forgot. These weren't just names on a list. These were people. Robert's phone buzzed again. Another text from Rebecca. I need an answer. He typed back, I can't do it. 3 dots appeared. Then, can't or won't. Robert stared at the screen. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Won't. The dots appeared again. Longer this time. Then you're a fool. Robert put the phone in his pocket and got out of the truck. The warehouse stretched out in front of him, gray and massive. Inside, 40 people were working, unaware that their names were on a list, that their futures were being decided by someone who'd never met them. He walked back inside and got to work. Tuesday came. Robert didn't sleep. He lay in bed and stared at the ceiling and thought about every possible version of this decision. By morning, he still didn't have an answer. He dropped Emily at school. She was quiet. She'd been quiet all week. You okay, baby girl? Emily nodded, but she didn't look at him. Hey, look at me. She did. Her eyes were red. What's wrong? Are we going to be okay, Daddy? The question hit him like a punch. Why would you ask that? Because you're sad. And you're working a lot, and I heard you on the phone with Grandma. You said the bills are hard. Robert crouched down so they were eye level. Listen to me. We're okay. I promise. I'm working hard because I want to make sure you have everything you need. That's my job, not yours. You don't have to worry about bills or money or any of that, okay? Emily nodded, but she didn't look convinced. I love you. You know that? I love you too, Daddy. Robert kissed her forehead and watched her walk into the school building. She turned once at the door and waved. He waved back. Then he sat in the truck and tried not to fall apart. At 7:00 a.m., his phone rang. Rebecca Anderson, he answered. Yeah? My office. Now. She hung up before he could respond. Robert drove to Anderson and walked straight to her office. She was waiting, standing by the window, arms crossed. Close the door. He did. Rebecca turned to face him. You said no. I did. Why? Because I won't put my name on something that destroys people. Rebecca stepped closer. You think I'm destroying them? I'm trying to save this company. If we don't cut costs now, we lose everything in 6 months. 200 jobs gone, including yours, including theirs. 40 now or 200 later. That's the choice. Then find another way. There is no other way. There's always another way. Rebecca stared at him. Her jaw was tight, her eyes hard. You have until tomorrow morning. After that, the offer's gone, and so are you. Robert met her gaze. Then I guess I'm gone. He walked out of her office, down the stairs, and straight to his truck. He didn't clock in. He didn't go to his desk. He just left. At home, Robert sat at the kitchen table and opened his laptop. He pulled up the restructuring plan and read it again. Every page, every line, every number. And then he started working. He worked through lunch. He worked through dinner. He worked until 2 a.m, building spreadsheets, running analyses, cross-referencing shipment data with staffing reports. By Wednesday at dawn, he had 47 pages of his own. A plan, a real one. One that cut costs without cutting people. Robert printed it, put it in a folder, and drove to Anderson. He walked straight to Rebecca's office and knocked. Come in. He opened the door. Rebecca was at her desk, coffee in hand, laptop open. You're persistent. Robert set the folder on her desk. I found another way. Rebecca raised an eyebrow. Did you? Read it. She opened the folder and started scanning. Robert stood there, hands in his pockets, watching her eyes move across the pages. She didn't say anything. Just read. Flip to the next page. Read some more. 10 minutes passed. Finally, she looked up. This might actually work. Robert exhaled. Rebecca leaned back in her chair. Present it to the board Monday. If they approve it, you just saved 80 jobs. And if they don't, then we both lose. Robert nodded. Fair enough. Rebecca closed the folder. You could have just taken the money, Williams. $95,000, no questions asked. Why didn't you? Robert looked at her. Really looked. At the sharp suit and the perfect hair and the desk with no personal items. At the person who'd built a wall so high she couldn't see the people on the other side. Because I have a daughter, he said. And one day she's going to ask me what kind of man I was. I want to be able to tell her I was someone she could be proud of. Rebecca didn't respond. Just watched him with those sharp, assessing eyes. Robert turned and walked out. He didn't know if the board would approve his plan. He didn't know if Rebecca would keep her word. He didn't know if any of this mattered. But he knew one thing. When Emily asked him what kind of man he was, he'd be able to look her in the eye and tell the truth. And for now, that was enough. The phone call came at 6:50 a.m. on Wednesday while Robert was pouring coffee into a thermos that leaked from the bottom. He'd been awake since 5, couldn't sleep, kept running through the presentation he'd give to the board in 5 days. The number on the screen was Anderson's main line. He answered. My office. Now, Rebecca's voice. No greeting, no explanation. Robert looked at the clock. Emily was still asleep upstairs. Mrs. Flores wouldn't be over until 8. I can't. My daughter. Bring her. The line went dead. Robert stood in the kitchen holding his phone, trying to parse what had just happened. Bring Emily to Anderson Logistics at 7 in the morning on a Wednesday. He took the stairs 2 at a time and opened Emily's door. She was curled on her side, one arm tucked under her pillow, breathing deep and steady. He hated to wake her. She'd been up late last night with a cough that rattled in her chest, the kind that made him check on her 3 times before he finally went to bed himself. Baby girl, wake up. She stirred, eyes blinking open, confused. Is it time for school? Not yet. We have to go somewhere first. Get dressed. Something warm. Emily sat up, rubbing her eyes. Where are we going? My work. It'll be quick. She didn't ask more questions. Just climbed out of bed and pulled on jeans and a purple sweater Linda had bought her last year, back when money wasn't quite so tight and Robert could afford to say yes to things that cost more than $10. The sweater was getting small. Emily's wrists stuck out past the cuffs. They drove to Anderson in silence. Emily sat in the passenger seat, hands folded in her lap, staring out the window at the gray morning. The September sky was low and heavy, threatening rain. Robert turned the heat up. The truck's heater rattled but worked. Barely. Am I in trouble? Robert glanced at her. No. Why would you think that? Because we're going to your work and it's not even time for school yet. You're not in trouble. My boss just needs to talk to me about something. Is it important? I think so. Emily nodded and went back to staring out the window. Robert pulled into the Anderson lot and parked near the admin building. The warehouse across the way was already buzzing with activity. Forklifts, moving pallets, workers in orange vests, shouting instructions over the noise of diesel engines. Inside the admin building, the air smelled like burnt coffee and industrial cleaner. Robert led Emily up the stairs to the second floor. Rebecca's office door was open. She was at her desk, reading something on her laptop, a mug of black coffee at her elbow. Robert knocked on the door frame. Rebecca looked up. Her eyes went to Emily, lingered there for a beat, then shifted back to Robert. Come in, both of you. Robert stepped inside, Emily close behind him. She gripped the back of his shirt with one small hand, the way she used to when she was 4, and everything scared her. Rebecca closed her laptop and leaned back in her chair. You must be Emily. Emily nodded but didn't speak. I'm Rebecca. I work with your dad. Still no response. Emily pressed closer to Robert's side. Rebecca's expression softened just slightly, just enough to notice. She opened a drawer, pulled out a blank sheet of paper and a set of colored pencils, and set them on the desk. I have to talk to your dad for a few minutes. You can sit over there if you want. She pointed to a small table by the window. Draw something. Or just sit. Whatever you like. Emily looked up at Robert. He nodded. She took the paper and pencils and walked to the table, pulling out a chair and settling in with the quiet focus of a child who'd learned early how to make herself invisible. Rebecca waited until Emily was seated before she spoke again. Her voice dropped lower, meant just for Robert. I read your plan. 3 times. Ran the numbers myself. It's solid. Robert felt something loosen in his chest. So you'll present it to the board? I already did. Emergency meeting yesterday afternoon. They approved it. Robert blinked. They did? Unanimously. We implement starting next week. No layoffs. You just saved 80 jobs, Williams. The weight that had been sitting on Robert's shoulders for the past 5 days lifted. Just a fraction. Not gone. Never gone. But lighter. Why'd you call me in so early? Rebecca stood and walked to the window, arms crossed, looking out at the warehouse below. Because I need to know if you're serious about this. The plan works on paper. Implementation's different. I need someone who can manage it. Someone the staff trusts. Someone who won't quit the first time it gets hard. Robert watched her, trying to read the angle. There was always an angle. You're offering me the manager position again. I'm offering you senior manager of operations. Same salary, $95,000. But this time, no conditions. You run the new logistics system. You report directly to me. You keep this company running. And if I say no, Rebecca turned to face him, then I find someone else. But it won't be someone who cares about the people in that warehouse the way you do. It'll be someone who sees them as line items on a budget report. Your choice. Robert looked at Emily. She was drawing, head bent over the paper, purple pencil moving in slow, careful strokes. She didn't know they were talking about money. She didn't know that $95,000 meant she could have new shoes, new clothes, a birthday party with more than just Robert and Mrs. Flores. She didn't know it meant he could stop working doubles, stop coming home at 8 or 9 at night, stop missing school events because he couldn't afford to take time off. But she knew what it felt like when he was gone. She knew what it was like to eat dinner alone at Mrs. Flores' house, because her dad was still at work. She knew how to fold herself small and quiet so she didn't add to his stress. Robert turned back to Rebecca. I'll take it, but I need flexibility. If my daughter needs me, I leave. No questions. Rebecca's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Fair. She extended her hand. Robert shook it. Her grip was firm, businesslike, the handshake of someone who didn't waste time on pleasantries. Start Monday. HR will have the paperwork ready. Robert nodded. Thank you. Rebecca's eyes flicked to Emily again. She's quiet. She's learned to be. Something passed across Rebecca's face then, too quick to name. Regret, maybe, or recognition. She walked to the table where Emily sat and crouched down so they were eye level. What are you drawing? Emily held up the paper. It showed a woman standing in an office. The office was big, with a window that took up half the wall. The woman stood alone. No other people. Just her and the empty space around her. Rebecca stared at the drawing. Her jaw tightened. When she spoke, her voice was quieter than Robert had ever heard it. Why did you draw me alone? Emily tilted her head, considering. Because you look like my mommy used to. Before she got sick. Rebecca's breath caught. Robert saw it. The way her shoulders stiffened, the way her hands curled into fists at her sides. Your mommy? Emily nodded. She worked a lot. She was always tired. And then she got sick, and she said she wished she'd smiled more. The silence stretched. Rebecca didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at the drawing like it was something dangerous. Finally she stood. You're very observant, Emily. Emily shrugged. Daddy says I see things other people don't. Rebecca glanced at Robert. He couldn't read her expression. Guarded, careful, like she'd just shown more than she meant to and was closing the door before anyone could see inside. You should get her to school. Robert took the hint. He collected the drawing and the pencils, thanked Rebecca, and led Emily out of the office. They didn't speak until they were back in the truck. Daddy? Yeah? That lady's sad. Robert started the engine. Why do you think that? Because she doesn't smile. Not really. She smiles with her mouth but not her eyes. Robert pulled out of the lot and headed toward Emily's school. Maybe she just doesn't have much to smile about. Everybody has something to smile about. Mommy said so. Robert's throat tightened. Linda had said that. Right up until the end, even when the pain was so bad she couldn't get out of bed, she'd found something to smile about. The way the light came through the window, the sound of Emily laughing in the next room, the feeling of Robert's hand in hers. Mommy was right. Emily folded the drawing in half and tucked it into her backpack. Can I give this to her? The lady? You want to give it to Rebecca? Yeah, maybe it'll make her feel better. Robert didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. If you want to. He dropped Emily at school, watched her walk through the front doors, then drove back to Anderson. The warehouse was in full swing now, the morning shift in high gear. Robert clocked in and went straight to his desk. Emails were already piling up. Questions about the new logistics plan, timeline requests, budget clarifications. He worked through lunch. Didn't even notice the time until his phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Flores. Emily, home safe, eating snack. See you tonight. Robert rubbed his eyes and checked the clock. 3:45 p.m. He'd been staring at spreadsheets for 6 hours straight. His phone buzzed again. This time, Rebecca, need to see you. End of day. Robert finished the budget report he'd been working on and walked to Rebecca's office at 5. She was on a call, gestured for him to sit. He waited while she wrapped up, her voice clipped and efficient, the kind of tone that didn't leave room for argument. She hung up and looked at him. The board wants a status update on implementation. Friday morning, you're presenting. Me? It's your plan. You presented. Robert's stomach tightened. I've never presented to the board before. Then you'll learn. I'll be there. You'll be fine. She slid a folder across the desk. Prep materials, timeline, talking points. Review it tonight. We'll do a run-through tomorrow afternoon. Robert took the folder. Anything else? Rebecca hesitated. Just a beat. Then, your daughter's drawing. She really thinks I look sad? She sees what she sees. And what do you see? The question caught him off guard. Robert studied her, the sharp suit and the perfect posture and the eyes that never quite softened. He thought about the empty office, the lack of photos, the coffee mug with no personal markings, the life built around work and nothing else. I see someone who's very good at her job. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. Rebecca's mouth tightened. She turned back to her laptop, dismissing him without another word. Robert walked out, folder in hand, and drove home. Thursday was chaos. Robert spent the morning in back-to-back meetings, walking warehouse supervisors through the new logistics protocols, fielding questions he didn't have answers to yet, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. By noon, his head was pounding. At 2, he met Rebecca in the conference room for the presentation run-through. She sat at the head of the table, laptop open, expression unreadable. Start. Robert opened the folder and pulled out his notes. He'd rehearsed this a dozen times last night after Emily went to bed, standing in the kitchen with the printed slides, talking to an empty room. It had felt solid then. Now with Rebecca watching, it felt flimsy. He started talking. Cost savings, efficiency gains, timeline milestones. Rebecca didn't interrupt, just listened, typing occasional notes on her laptop. When he finished, she looked up. You sound like you're reading a grocery list. I'm following the talking points. The board doesn't care about talking points. They care about results. They want to know this plan works. Convince them. Robert tried again. This time he didn't look at the notes, just talked about the warehouse staff who'd been here for 10, 15, 20 years, about the families depending on those paychecks, about the fact that cutting costs didn't have to mean cutting people if you were willing to think creatively. Rebecca leaned back in her chair. Better. Do it like that tomorrow. You think they'll approve the budget? If you sell it right, yes. Robert gathered his notes. Can I ask you something? Rebecca raised an eyebrow. Go ahead. Why do you care about this plan, about keeping people employed? You could have just done the layoffs. Faster, cleaner. Why didn't you? Rebecca was silent for a long moment. Then, because your daughter drew a picture of me standing alone in an office, and she was right. I've spent 15 years building a career. I'm good at what I do, but no one draws pictures for me. No one waits for me to come home. And I'm starting to wonder what the point of all this is, if at the end of it I'm still standing in an empty room. The honesty of it hit Robert like a slap. He didn't know what to say, so he just nodded and left. That night, after Emily was asleep, Robert's phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. He almost didn't answer. "Hello? It's Rebecca." Robert sat up straighter. "Is something wrong?" "No, I just—" She paused. "I wanted to ask you something. About your wife." Robert's chest tightened. "What about her? You said she died 3 years ago." "Cancer?" "Breast cancer. Stage 4. By the time they caught it, it was already in her bones." Rebecca was quiet. Then, "How did you do it? Work and take care of a sick wife and a 4-year-old? "I didn't. Not well. I missed her last 2 months because I was working doubles to pay for treatments that didn't work. I thought I was doing the right thing, providing, but all I did was steal time I can't get back." "Do you regret it?" Robert thought about Linda's face in those final weeks, the way she'd smiled even when the pain was unbearable, the way she'd held Emily and whispered that everything would be okay, even though they both knew it wouldn't be every day. Rebecca didn't respond right away. When she did, her voice was softer. "I was engaged once, at 28. He wanted kids. I wanted VP. I chose the promotion. He married someone else 2 years later. I convinced myself I made the right choice." "Did you?" "I don't know. I have everything I wanted. But some nights I sit in my house and wonder who I'd call if something went wrong. And I can't think of anyone." Robert leaned back against the couch. "It's not too late to change that." "How do you know?" "Because you're asking the question. That means you're not as far gone as you think." Rebecca was quiet for so long, Robert thought she'd hung up. Then, "Your daughter asked me today why I don't smile. I didn't know what to tell her. Tell her the truth." "Which is?" "That you forgot how. But you're trying to remember." Rebecca exhaled. It sounded like surrender. "I'll see you tomorrow, Williams." She hung up. Robert sat in the dark living room, phone in his hand, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Rebecca Anderson, CEO, asking him for advice about life, about connection, about the things that mattered when the spreadsheets were closed and the office was empty. He thought about Emily's drawing, the woman standing alone. And he thought about the fact that Emily, at 7 years old, had seen what Robert was only just beginning to understand. Rebecca wasn't cold. She was lonely. Friday morning arrived too fast. Robert put on his best shirt, the one Linda had bought him for their anniversary 5 years ago, and drove to Anderson with a folder full of notes he barely remembered writing. The board meeting was at 9. Emily had hugged him extra tight that morning. "Good luck, Daddy." "Thanks, baby girl. You're going to do great. You always do." Robert wished he had half her confidence. The boardroom was on the 3rd floor, a space Robert had only been in twice before, both times to deliver reports he'd written for someone else to present. The table was long, polished oak. 7 board members sat around it, all of them older, wealthier, and far more comfortable in rooms like this than Robert would ever be. Rebecca sat at the head of the table. She nodded once when Robert walked in. No smile, no encouragement, just acknowledgement. Robert took his seat and opened the folder. The board chairman, a man named James Harmon with silver hair and a tie that probably cost more than Robert's monthly rent, cleared his throat. "Mr. Williams, we've reviewed your proposal. Walk us through the implementation timeline." Robert started talking. He didn't look at his notes, just spoke from memory, from conviction, from the 100 hours he'd spent building this plan, because the alternative was watching 80 people lose their jobs. He talked about consolidating shipping routes, about automating inventory tracking, about investing in software that would pay for itself in 18 months. He talked about the people in the warehouse, the ones who'd been here longer than most of the board members, the ones who knew this operation inside and out. When he finished, the room was silent. Then Harmon spoke. "And you're confident this saves us the same amount as the original restructuring plan?" "More, actually. 18% more over 2 years." One of the other board members, a woman in her 60s with reading glasses perched on her nose, leaned forward. "Why didn't the previous management team propose this?" Rebecca answered before Robert could. "Because it requires upfront investment and long-term thinking. They were focused on short-term gains." The woman nodded. "And you trust Mr. Williams to manage this?" "I do." Harmon looked at Robert. "You understand what you're taking on? If this fails, the company fails. 200 jobs gone, including yours." Robert met his gaze. "I understand." "Then we're approved. Pending quarterly reviews. Don't disappoint us, Mr. Williams." The board members gathered their things and filed out. Rebecca stayed seated until the room was empty. Then she looked at Robert. "You did good. Thanks. Monday, you start. HR will have everything ready." Robert nodded and stood to leave. He was halfway to the door when Rebecca spoke again. "Williams?" He turned. "Your wife. The one who said people should smile more." She was right. Robert didn't know what to say to that, so he just left. Sunday afternoon, Robert took Emily to the hospital for her annual checkup. It was routine. Nothing to worry about. Just the pediatrician listening to her heart, checking her reflexes, asking the same questions they asked every year. Except this time, the doctor paused. "Has Emily been more tired than usual?" Robert frowned. "A little. She's been going to bed earlier." "Any shortness of breath? Dizziness?" "She had a cough last week." "Why?" The doctor didn't answer right away. Just pulled out a stethoscope and listened to Emily's heart again. Longer this time. More carefully. "I'm hearing an irregular rhythm. It might be nothing, but I want to run some tests, just to be safe." Robert's stomach dropped. "What kind of tests?" "An EKG. Maybe an echocardiogram. We'll start with the EKG today." They moved Emily to another room. She sat on the exam table, electrodes stuck to her chest, wires connecting her to a machine that beeped and hummed. Robert stood beside her, holding her hand. "Am I sick, Daddy?" "No, baby girl. The doctor just wants to make sure your heart's working right." Emily nodded, but her eyes were scared. The EKG took 10 minutes. The doctor studied the printout, frown deepening. "I'm referring you to a pediatric cardiologist. There's an irregularity that needs further evaluation." "What kind of irregularity?" "Emily has a congenital heart defect, likely a ventricular septal defect, a hole in the wall between the heart's lower chambers. It's not uncommon, but given her age and the fact that it's showing symptoms now, we need to monitor it closely." Robert's vision tunneled. "Symptoms?" "The fatigue, the cough. Those could be signs that the defect is progressing. The cardiologist will determine if surgery is necessary." Surgery. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. The doctor handed Robert a referral slip. "They'll call you within 48 hours to schedule. In the meantime, if Emily shows any signs of distress, chest pain, severe shortness of breath, fainting, take her to the ER immediately." Robert took the slip. His hand was shaking. They drove home in silence. Emily stared out the window. Robert gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. At home, he put Emily to bed early, then sat at the kitchen table and Googled ventricular septal defect. The search results made his stomach churn. Surgery, open heart surgery, recovery time, 6 to 8 weeks, cost upward of $80,000. Robert pulled up his insurance information. Maximum out of pocket, $34,000. He had $8,000 in savings. The phone rang 2 days later, Tuesday morning. Robert was at Anderson, knee-deep in logistics reports. The number was from Children's Hospital of Pennsylvania. "Mr. Williams? This is Dr. Nina Patel, pediatric cardiology. I've reviewed Emily's EKG. We need to schedule a consultation as soon as possible. How's Thursday at 2? I'll be there." "Good. Bring any medical records you have. We'll do an echocardiogram and discuss next steps." Robert hung up and stared at his desk. $34,000. Even with the raise, even with the new salary, he didn't have it, wouldn't have it for months. He thought about calling his mother. She'd offer to help. She'd drain her retirement account if he asked. But she was 70, living on Social Security and a small pension. He couldn't do that to her. He thought about a loan, but he was still paying off Linda's hospital bills. No bank would touch him. His phone buzzed. Text from Rebecca. Need to talk. My office. Now. Robert walked upstairs. Rebecca was at her desk, reading something on her laptop. She looked up when he entered. Closed the door. He did. Rebecca folded her hands on the desk. You look like hell. What's wrong? Robert didn't know why he told her. Maybe because he was tired of carrying it alone. Maybe because she was the only person who'd asked. My daughter's sick. Heart defect. She needs surgery. Soon? Rebecca's expression shifted. Not pity. Something sharper. How much? 34,000. Out of pocket. Do you have it? No. Rebecca leaned back in her chair. When's the surgery? Don't know yet. I meet with the cardiologist Thursday. She was quiet for a long time. Then she opened a drawer, pulled out a checkbook, and started writing. Robert watched, confused, as she tore the check free and slid it across the desk. $34,000. Made out to Robert Williams. I can't take this. You can, and you will. Robert stared at the check. This is, I don't even know what to say. Say you'll pay it back. 24 months. 0 interest. Legal contract. Notarized. Why would you do this? Rebecca's jaw tightened. Because 5 years ago, I had a chance to help someone I cared about. I didn't take it. He needed me, and I chose work instead. I'm not making that mistake again. Robert's throat closed. He picked up the check. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just save your daughter. He left her office, check in hand, and sat in his truck for 10 minutes, trying to breathe. Thursday at 2 o'clock, Robert sat in Dr. Patel's office at Children's Hospital while Emily lay on an exam table in the next room. Electrodes taped to her small chest, a technician moving an ultrasound wand across her ribs. Through the glass partition, Robert could see the monitor displaying Emily's heart in real time, chambers contracting and relaxing, blood flowing in patterns he didn't understand. Dr. Patel was maybe 40, with dark hair pulled into a tight bun and eyes that had seen too many worried parents. She stood beside Robert, arms crossed, watching the same monitor. There. See that? She pointed to a section of the screen where 2 chambers met. That's the septal defect. The hole. It's significant. About 8 millimeters. Robert's hands gripped the armrests. What does that mean? It means Emily's heart is working harder than it should. Blood's flowing between chambers that should be separate. Over time, that causes strain, fatigue, breathing problems. If we don't repair it, she'll develop pulmonary hypertension. Her heart will fail before she's 20. The room tilted. Robert forced himself to breathe. So she needs surgery. Yes, within 2 weeks, maybe sooner, depending on how quickly her symptoms progress. And the surgery, what does it involve? Dr. Patel pulled out a tablet and brought up a diagram. Open heart. We'll stop her heart, put her on bypass, repair the defect with a patch, then restart. Recovery is 6 to 8 weeks. Success rate is 97%. Robert focused on the 3%. The margin where things went wrong, where parents walked into hospitals with sick children and walked out with memories. And the cost? Your insurance will cover 60%. Out-of-pocket maximum is $34,000. Financial services can work with you on a payment plan. Robert nodded. Even though there was no payment plan that would work, even with Rebecca's check sitting in his wallet, folded and creased from the number of times he'd pulled it out just to make sure it was real, he still felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff. The technician finished. Emily sat up, rubbing at the sticky residue the electrodes left behind. She looked so small on that table, so fragile. Robert wanted to scoop her up and run, take her somewhere. This wasn't happening. Somewhere hearts didn't have holes and 7-year-olds didn't need their chests cracked open to survive. Dr. Patel walked into the exam room. Emily, You did great. Your dad and I are going to talk for a few more minutes, and then you can go home." Emily nodded. She didn't ask questions. Robert wondered if that was good or bad, whether she understood what was happening or had just learned to trust that the adults would handle it. Back in the consultation room, Dr. Patel pulled up a calendar. "I have an opening next Thursday, October 6th. We'll admit Emily Wednesday night, surgery Thursday morning at 7. She'll be in ICU for 2 days, then move to a regular room for another 5 to 7 days." Robert did the math. October 6th was 12 days away. 12 days to prepare Emily for the fact that strangers were going to cut her open. 12 days to figure out how to keep working while his daughter recovered in a hospital bed. 12 days to pretend he wasn't terrified. Okay, Thursday the 6th. Dr. Patel handed him a folder thick with forms. Consent documents, pre-op instructions, post-op care guidelines. A list of things Emily couldn't eat or drink in the 24 hours before surgery. Robert took the folder and walked back to the exam room. Emily was dressed, swinging her legs off the edge of the table. She smiled when she saw him, the kind of smile that broke his heart because it was so normal, so unaware of what was coming. "Can we get ice cream, Daddy?" "Sure, baby girl. Whatever you want." They stopped at a shop on the way home. Emily ordered mint chocolate chip and a waffle cone. Robert got nothing, just sat across from her in a sticky booth and watched her eat, memorizing the way her nose wrinkled when the ice cream was too cold, the way she hummed while she chewed. "Daddy? Yeah? Am I going to be okay?" Robert reached across the table and took her hand. "You're going to be fine. The doctors are really good. They're going to fix your heart so it works perfectly." "Will it hurt?" He couldn't lie. "A little. But they'll give you medicine to make it better. And I'll be there the whole time." Emily licked her cone, thinking, Mommy had to go to the hospital a lot, and she didn't come home. Robert's throat closed. "This is different. You're not sick like Mommy was. Your heart just needs a little repair, like when we fix a flat tire. The car's still good. It just needs help." Emily seemed to accept this. She finished her ice cream and wiped her hands on a napkin. On the drive home, she fell asleep in the passenger seat, head tilted against the window, breath fogging the glass. Robert carried her inside and laid her on the couch. She didn't wake up. He covered her with a blanket and sat on the floor beside her, back against the couch, watching her chest rise and fall. His phone buzzed. Text from Rebecca. "How'd it go?" Robert typed back. "Surgery scheduled. Oct 6, 2 weeks from today." 3 dots appeared then. "Do you need anything?" He stared at the question. What did he need? Time. Money. A guarantee that Emily would survive this, none of which Rebecca could give him. "Just prayers," he typed. The dots appeared again, stayed longer this time, then, "You have them." Robert set the phone down and closed his eyes. He didn't pray often. Hadn't since Linda died, and he'd realized God either didn't listen or didn't care. But tonight, sitting on the floor of this rental house with his daughter asleep on the couch and surgery looming 12 days away, he prayed. Not for himself. For Emily, that she'd be brave, that her heart would hold, that he'd get to watch her grow up. The next week passed in a blur. Robert worked half days at Anderson, implementing the new logistics system while fielding constant questions from warehouse supervisors who didn't trust change. Every night he came home to Emily, who seemed smaller and quieter with each passing day, like she was already bracing for what was coming. On Monday, 1 week before surgery, Rebecca called him into her office. He climbed the stairs expecting another logistics update, another timeline adjustment. Instead, he found her standing by the window, arms crossed, staring out at the warehouse below. "Close the door." Robert did. Rebecca turned to face him. "I need to tell you something. About why I gave you that money." Robert waited. "I had a daughter 5 years ago. Her name was Lily." The past tense hit like a fist. Robert's chest tightened. She was 8. "I was VP of operations at Hastings Global, working 80-hour weeks, traveling constantly. Her father and I were divorced. He had primary custody. I saw her every other weekend when I wasn't on a plane." Rebecca's voice was flat, clinical, like she was reciting someone else's story. But her hands were clenched at her sides, knuckles white. "One night, I was in Chicago for a conference. Lily called me, said she missed me, asked if I could come home early. I told her I couldn't. I had meetings, important ones, she cried. I told her to be strong, that I'd see her in 3 days. Rebecca paused, swallowed hard. There was a fire, electrical fault in her father's house. 2 in the morning. Lily didn't make it out. Robert's breath caught. He didn't know what to say. There were no words for this. I got the call at 4 a.m., flew home, but she was already gone. And the last thing I said to her was that work was more important than being there. Rebecca's voice cracked just once. Then she pulled herself together, straightened her shoulders, forced the mask back into place. So when you told me Emily needed surgery, and I saw that same look on your face that I used to see in the mirror, the one that says you'd do anything, give anything, if it meant your kid got to live, I couldn't say no. I couldn't be the person who chose money over a child's life. Not again. Robert stood there, gutted. He thought about every harsh word he'd thought about Rebecca, every judgment he'd made about her coldness, her ruthlessness. None of it had been wrong, but none of it had been the whole story either. I'm sorry. Rebecca shook her head. Just don't waste the time you have with Emily, because once it's gone, you don't get it back. Robert left her office and sat in his truck for 20 minutes, trying to process what he'd just heard. Rebecca Anderson, CEO, who terrified half the warehouse staff and had a reputation for being impossible to work with, had lost her daughter, and she'd been carrying that weight alone for 5 years. He pulled out his phone and texted her, "Thank you for everything." She didn't respond. The days before surgery crawled. Robert took Emily to school, picked her up, made her favorite meals, read to her every night. They didn't talk about what was coming. Emily seemed content to pretend it wasn't happening, and Robert wasn't going to take that away from her. On Tuesday, 3 days before surgery, the hospital called. They needed to move the date up. Emily's oxygen levels had dropped during her last checkup. Dr. Patel wanted to operate Friday instead of Thursday, 2 days away instead of 3. Robert agreed because what else could he do? He called Anderson and told them he wouldn't be in for the rest of the week. Then he sat Emily down and explained that the surgery was happening sooner than they'd thought. Emily took it better than he did. Okay, that means it'll be over faster, right? Right? Good. I don't like waiting. That night, Robert couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through every possible worst-case scenario. Emily coding on the table, the anesthesia not taking, infection, bleeding, the 3% failure rate looming larger than the 97% success. At 2 in the morning, his phone rang. "Rebecca, you awake?" "Yeah." "Me too. Can't stop thinking about Friday." Robert sat up. "You're thinking about Emily's surgery?" "I haven't stopped thinking about it since you told me." Robert didn't know what to say. The fact that Rebecca cared, that she was awake at 2 in the morning worrying about a child she'd barely met, felt both strange and right. "She's going to be okay." Rebecca was quiet then. "You don't know that." "No. But I have to believe it." "Why?" "Because the alternative destroys me." Rebecca exhaled. It sounded like she'd been holding her breath for 5 years. "I should have been there. With Lily. I should have told the conference to go to hell and gotten on a plane. But I didn't. I chose work. And she died alone." Robert's chest ached. "You didn't know." "I should have. She called me crying, and I told her work was more important. What kind of mother does that? The kind who was doing what she thought was right. You were providing, taking care of her future. You couldn't have known. But I did know. Deep down, I knew she needed me. I just convinced myself she'd be fine, that 3 more days wouldn't matter." Robert thought about all the times he'd come home late, all the dinners Emily had eaten alone, all the school events he'd missed. He told himself the same thing, that she'd be fine, that providing was enough. Regret doesn't change the past, but it can change what you do next. Rebecca didn't respond for a long time. When she did, her voice was softer. "Emily's lucky to have you." "I'm the lucky one." They stayed on the line, neither speaking, just breathing. Finally, Rebecca said she should try to sleep. Robert said the same. Neither of them meant it. Friday morning arrived cold and gray. Robert woke at 5, got Emily dressed, and drove to Children's Hospital. They checked in at 6. Emily was calm, almost eerily so, like she'd decided being scared wouldn't help and had chosen something else instead. The pre-op area was all white walls and beeping machines. A nurse came in, checked Emily's vitals, started an IV. Emily didn't flinch. Just watched the needle slide into her arm with mild curiosity. Dr. Patel appeared at 7, dressed in surgical scrubs. Ready? Emily nodded. You're very brave. My dad says being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do it anyway. Dr. Patel smiled. Your dad's right. They wheeled Emily toward the operating room. Robert walked beside the gurney, holding her hand. At the double doors marked Surgical Swite, authorized personnel only. They stopped. A nurse touched Robert's shoulder. This is as far as you can go. Robert looked at Emily. She looked so small on that gurney, so young. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. I love you, baby girl. I'll be right here when you wake up. I love you too, Daddy. They wheeled her through the doors. Robert stood there, watching until she disappeared around a corner. Then he walked to the surgical waiting room and sat in a chair by the window. The room was full of other people waiting, parents, spouses, siblings, all of them wearing the same expression, fear disguised as hope. Robert pulled out his phone. No messages. He texted his mother. Surgery started. We'll update when I know more. She responded immediately, praying. She's going to be fine. Love you. Robert set the phone on his lap and stared at the wall. The clock above the nurse's station read 7:15 a.m. Surgery would take 4 to 6 hours. Dr. Patel had said she'd update him every hour. At 8:00 a.m., a nurse came out. Mr. Williams, Dr. Patel wanted me to let you know they've started. Everything's going smoothly. Robert nodded. Smoothly. That was good. At 9:00 a.m., another update, still going well. Emily's vitals were stable. At 10:00 a.m., the same. Robert tried to read a magazine someone had left on the table beside him. Couldn't focus. The words blurred together. At 10:30, his phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Mr. Williams? This is Kenneth Clark. Robert's stomach dropped. Kenneth Clark, CFO. The man Rebecca had fired for trying to funnel money to his brother's company. What do you want? Kenneth's voice was cold, smooth. I wanted to let you know I filed a complaint with the board against you and Rebecca Anderson. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. Robert's vision narrowed. What are you talking about? The $34,000 Rebecca gave you. Company funds used for personal expenses. That's illegal, Mr. Williams. I have documentation. Bank records, emails, everything. It was a loan. Legal. Notarized. Doesn't matter. She used company money without board approval. That's grounds for termination. For both of you. Robert's hands shook. You're doing this because she fired you. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. The board's meeting Monday. You and Rebecca will be there to answer questions. If I were you, I'd start looking for a new job. Kenneth hung up. Robert sat there, phone in his hand, trying to breathe. Emily was in surgery. His daughter was on a table with her chest open, and her heart stopped, and Kenneth Clark was trying to destroy what was left of Robert's life because Rebecca had refused to let him commit fraud. At 11:00 a.m. Dr. Patel came out herself, still in scrubs, mask pulled down around her neck. Robert stood. Is she okay? She's doing great. We've repaired the defect. Her heart's restarted and beating strong. We're closing now. Another hour, then she'll go to ICU. Robert's knees almost gave out. She's okay. She's perfect. Dr. Patel squeezed his shoulder and went back through the doors. Robert sat down, buried his face in his hands, and cried. Not from fear, from relief so overwhelming it hurt. His phone buzzed. Text from Rebecca. Any news? Robert typed back. Surgery went well. She's in recovery. 3 dots. Then, thank God. Robert wanted to tell her about Kenneth's call, about the board meeting, but not now. Not while Emily was still in ICU and he was still trying to remember how to breathe. Emily woke up at 3 in the afternoon. Groggy, confused, in pain despite the morphine drip, Robert sat beside her bed holding her hand. "Daddy, I'm here, baby girl. Did they fix it?" "They did. Your heart's perfect now." Emily smiled, eyes already closing again. "Good." She slept for the next 6 hours. Robert didn't move. Just sat there, watching the monitor above her bed, counting each heartbeat like a prayer answered. At 9 p.m. a nurse came in. "You should go home. Get some sleep. She'll be out most of the night anyway." Robert shook his head. "I'm staying." The nurse didn't argue, just brought him a blanket and a pillow. Robert tried to sleep in the chair beside Emily's bed. Couldn't. His mind kept circling back to Kenneth's call, the board meeting, the accusation of fraud. If Kenneth succeeded, Robert would lose his job, the raise, the ability to pay back Rebecca's loan, the ability to pay for Emily's follow-up care. And Rebecca would lose everything, her position, her reputation, maybe even her freedom if Kenneth pushed criminal charges. At midnight, Robert's phone buzzed. Text from Rebecca. "Can't sleep. How's Emily?" "Stable. Resting." "Good. I'm glad." Robert hesitated, then typed, "Kenneth called me. He's filing a complaint with the board. Says you embezzled company funds." The 3 dots appeared and stayed for a long time. Then, "I know. He called me too. Board meeting's Monday at 4. What are we going to do? Tell the truth? Let them decide." Robert stared at the screen. Tell the truth. Like it was that simple. Like the truth mattered when someone like Kenneth had power and lawyers and a grudge. "I'm sorry. This is my fault." Rebecca's response came fast. "No. It's mine. I made the call. I knew the risk. I'd do it again." Robert didn't know what to say to that, so he just typed, "Thank you. Get some sleep, Williams. Emily needs you rested." Robert set the phone down and looked at his daughter. She was breathing steady, face peaceful, completely unaware that the man who'd helped save her life was about to lose everything because he'd helped save hers. Saturday and Sunday blurred together. Emily improved hour by hour. By Sunday afternoon, she was moved from ICU to a regular room. She could sit up, eat soft foods, talk without wincing. Dr. Patel was thrilled. Robert was grateful. But the board meeting loomed over everything like a storm cloud. Monday at noon, Robert left Emily in the care of his mother, who'd driven up from Philadelphia that morning. He kissed Emily goodbye, promised he'd be back by dinner, and drove to Anderson. The board meeting was at 4. Robert arrived at 3:30 and went straight to Rebecca's office. She was there, dressed in the same gray suit she'd worn the first time he met her, but her face looked different, tired, older, like she'd aged 5 years in 5 days. "You ready for this?" Robert sat down. "No." "You?" "No." They sat in silence. Then Rebecca opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. "I have the contract. The loan agreement. Notarized. Legal. It proves this wasn't embezzlement. Will it matter? I don't know. Kenneth's good at spinning things. He'll make it sound like we conspired, like I gave you money to buy your loyalty. That's not what happened. I know. But perception is reality in rooms like this." At 3:55, they walked to the boardroom. The 7 board members were already seated. Kenneth sat at the far end, smug and sharp in a tailored suit. James Harmon, the board chairman, gestured to 2 empty chairs. "Miss Anderson, Mr. Williams, please sit." They did. Harmon folded his hands on the table. "We're here to address allegations brought by Mr. Clark regarding financial misconduct, specifically the transfer of $34,000 from company reserves to Mr. Williams for personal use. Mr. Clark, you have the floor." Kenneth stood. He had a folder, too, thicker than Rebecca's. On September 28th, Rebecca Anderson authorized a transfer of $34,000 from the Anderson Logistics Emergency Fund to Robert Williams. The stated purpose was a personal loan. However, company policy prohibits the use of emergency funds for personal loans without board approval. Ms. Anderson did not seek approval. She acted unilaterally in direct violation of company bylaw. Kenneth pulled out a printout. Bank records. highlighted in yellow. Furthermore, Mr. Williams received a 40% salary increase 1 week prior to this transfer. The timing suggests quid pro quo. Miss Anderson gave Mr. Williams money and a raise in exchange for his endorsement of her restructuring plan. One of the board members, the woman with the reading glasses, leaned forward. Miss Anderson, is this true? Did you transfer company funds without approval? Rebecca stood. I did. Mr. Williams' daughter required emergency heart surgery. He didn't have the funds. I provided a loan. Why didn't you seek board approval first? Because there wasn't time. The surgery was scheduled within days. I made a judgment call. Kenneth smiled. A judgment call that violated company policy and enriched an employee you'd recently promoted. That's not judgment. That's corruption. Robert stood. That's a lie. Harmon raised a hand. Mr. Williams, please. We'll hear from you in a moment. Kenneth wasn't finished. I have emails. Correspondence between Miss Anderson and Mr. Williams discussing the loan. None of them mention board approval. None of them follow proper channels. This was a backroom deal designed to buy Mr. Williams' loyalty. Rebecca's jaw tightened. I have the contract. Legal. Notarized. 24 months repayment at 0 interest. This isn't embezzlement. It's a loan. A loan made with company money, without authorization. The board members exchanged glances. Harmon looked at Robert. Mr. Williams, what do you have to say? Robert stood. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. Miss Anderson offered me the loan after I told her my daughter needed surgery. I didn't ask for it. In fact, I tried to refuse. But she insisted. She said it was a loan, not charity. We signed a contract. Legal terms. I'm already making payments. He pulled out the contract and set it on the table. This isn't corruption. This is one human being helping another. And the reason Miss Anderson didn't ask for board approval is because my daughter was dying. We didn't have time for bureaucracy. Kenneth scoffed. Convenient excuse. Robert turned to him. You want to talk about corruption? Let's talk about the $1.2 million you were funneling to your brother's logistics company. I have the emails. The ones where you promised him the Anderson contract in exchange for a 15% kickback. That's fraud, Kenneth. That's embezzlement. What Miss Anderson did was save a child's life. The room went silent. Harmon looked at Kenneth. Do you have a response to that allegation? Kenneth's face went red. That's unrelated to this matter. Is it true? This isn't about me. Harmon's expression hardened. It is now. Mr. Clark, you're dismissed. We'll address your allegations separately. Kenneth stood, grabbed his folder, and walked out. The door slammed behind him. Harmon looked at Rebecca. Miss Anderson, I'm not going to pretend you didn't violate policy. You did. But I'm also not going to pretend intent doesn't matter. You saved a child's life. That counts for something. He looked at the other board members. I move that we issue a formal reprimand for the policy violation, but take no further action. All in favor? 6 hands went up. Only 1 abstained. Harmon nodded. Motion carries. Miss Anderson, consider this a warning. Next time, follow proper channels. Mr. Williams, thank you for your honesty. You're both dismissed. Rebecca and Robert walked out of the boardroom together. Neither spoke until they reached the parking lot. Rebecca stopped by her car. You didn't have to do that. Defend me. Robert shrugged. You saved my daughter. I wasn't going to let Kenneth destroy you for it. Rebecca looked at him for a long moment. Then she did something Robert had never seen her do. She smiled, not the polite, professional smile she gave at meetings, a real one. Warm, genuine. Your daughter's lucky to have you, Williams. I'm the lucky one. Rebecca got in her car. Robert watched her drive away, then got in his truck and headed back to the hospital. 18 months later, spring arrived early in Pennsylvania. The trees outside Robert's house were green and full, the air warm enough that he could open the windows and let the breeze in. Emily was in the backyard, running around with a soccer ball, shouting instructions to an imaginary team. Her scar had faded to a thin white line down her chest. Dr. Patel said her heart was perfect, strong. No restrictions. Robert stood on the porch watching her play. He'd cut back his hours at Anderson. Not by much. Just enough to make it to her soccer games, her school plays, the moments that mattered. Rebecca pulled up in her car. She'd stepped down as CEO 6 months ago, taking a position as COO instead. Better hours, better balance. She said she was learning to smile again. Emily ran over when she saw Rebecca. "Miss Rebecca, watch this." She kicked the ball hard, sent it sailing across the yard. Rebecca clapped. "Very impressive." Emily grinned. "Daddy says I'm going to be a professional soccer player." "I believe it." Rebecca walked up to the porch. Robert handed her a glass of lemonade. They sat on the steps, watching Emily chase the ball. "She's doing well. Better than well. She's thriving." Rebecca smiled. "Good. That's what matters." They sat in comfortable silence. Emily ran over, out of breath, and plopped down between them. "Miss Rebecca, can I show you something?" "Of course." Emily pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket, a drawing. 3 people standing together under a tree, a man, a woman, and a small girl, all of them smiling. Rebecca took the drawing. Her eyes went soft. "Is this us?" "Yeah. I drew it at school. My teacher said we had to draw our family." Rebecca looked at Robert. He just smiled. Emily pointed to the woman in the drawing. "That's you. See? You're smiling now, with your eyes." Rebecca's breath caught. She pulled Emily into a hug. "Thank you, sweetheart." Emily hugged her back, then jumped up and ran back to her soccer ball. Rebecca stared at the drawing. "She called me family." Robert nodded. "You are." Rebecca looked at him, and for the first time since he'd known her, he saw something other than armor. He saw someone who'd learned what mattered, who'd chosen connection over control, who'd let herself be vulnerable enough to love again. "I don't deserve this." Robert shook his head. "Yes, you do. You deserve to be happy." Rebecca's eyes filled. "Say it again." Robert smiled. "You deserve to be happy." Rebecca wiped her eyes and laughed, the sound bright and free. "Your daughter taught me that. She's good at seeing things other people miss." They watched Emily play until the sun started to set, painting the sky orange and pink. Then they went inside, made dinner together, and sat around the table like a family, because that's what they were. Not the family any of them had planned, but the family they'd built. One act of kindness at a time, one moment of grace, one choice to help instead of turn away, and it was enough.